Perfect.
And such recording.
Okay. Great stuff. Brilliant. So good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the 24th Digital Dispatches session that we have run. My name's Dan West. I am the Chief Digital Information Officer for Health and Social Care in Northern Ireland. The title for today's session is Digital Strategy Implementation. I'm hoping that I've got some slides on screen here with that title on. Dawn, just wave if you can see the slides. Yeah, perfect. Good. So just as a bit of a recap, these Digital Dispatches sessions, we started doing them during COVID as a way to try and engage and do a bit of broadcast communication with people in Northern Ireland's health and care system that are interested in digital and data. Given during COVID we couldn't fill rooms full of people to have big presentations, we chose to do it in a more convenient virtual and digital way, and we'll continue to do so if people continue to engage and enjoy these sessions. If you want to see, if you're new to this and you want to see what's gone before, if you search in Google for DHCNI TV YouTube, you'll find our YouTube channel and you'll be able to then look at all of the previous Digital Dispatches sessions and other videos that we've created over the last few years. So the strapline to today's session around digital strategy implementation was a bit of a look back on the financial year 2022-23, progress that we've made with our digital investments, and hear about a little bit of what's in store for the coming financial year 23-24. I realised when I was preparing for this presentation that there's perhaps a more compelling subtext to the session title. The literary minded amongst you will know the modern classic Love in the Time of Cholera by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. So the sort of subtext to my presentation today is by a lesser known title by Danielo Ricardo Westevez, my author alter ego, and it's titled Maintaining Digital Momentum in a Time of Public Sector Austerity. And the sort of levity that I bring to this is to just try and lighten the mood a little bit on a Friday afternoon. In all seriousness, the current economic situation for public services is really challenging, and the reality is that a result of any squeeze on public spending is that our staff, those that work in the HSC, many of you are going to be under pressure to do more with less. And all of that is in the wake of a once-in-a-century global pandemic. The Northern Ireland budget that got announced just last week by the Secretary of State includes £14.2 billion in total overall, and £7.3 billion of that is for health and social care. And that budget allocation is essentially what's referred to as flat cash against last year's budgets. But it needs to account for both the high levels of inflation, and in particular high levels of inflation in cost in health and social care at the moment, and a settlement, if there is to be one, for the current pay dispute. So we're in a flat cash situation with a couple of big pressures on our revenue that makes things particularly difficult from a budgetary perspective this year. And even worse still, any additional money that might be coming to Northern Ireland as a result of the Barnett consequentials for a pay settlement in the English NHS will be clawed back by Treasury to contribute to the 660 million gap that we had in the 2022-23 financial year. So we are in a really quite challenging place when it comes to public services, and maintaining digital momentum then in that context becomes quite important. So if I had written the book that I was just joking with you on the last slide, the Maintaining Digital Momentum book, the chapters would look a little bit like the 12 topics that we've got on the clock face that you can see in front of you on screen here. So starting at the 1 o'clock position and running round, our path forward would include really understanding our problem space, having a clear vision of where we're trying to get to through the investments that we might make in digital technology and data. We need to recognize this budget pressure and figure out how specifically it applies to us, to the digital budget space. And we need to, in that context, prioritize effectively to make sure that those investments that we can afford within the budgetary envelope that we're allocated are the ones that bring us the biggest bang for our buck and address the biggest problems that we have as a service. From that, we need to be clear on risks. So for those projects and programs and investments that maybe aren't affordable at the moment, what does that mean in terms of business continuity and technology debt? We need to make sure that we're solving real problems and delivering real tangible benefits that help us to improve health and social care for our staff members and for our patients, clients, their carers and their families. We need to seize efficiency opportunities to make sure that technology is being delivered in the best possible way to make the best possible use of the resources and the funding that are available to us. And we need to keep our stakeholders up to speed. And really importantly, we need to listen to our stakeholders and to our service users to make sure that our vision and trajectory is still the right one for health and social care in the province. We need to level up our capabilities and processes to make sure that we are as good as our neighbours and maybe even as good as the best in the world at how we leverage digital technology for the benefit of health and care. And we need to do that under a governance structure that's effective and inclusive in the way that we bring people into our decision-making processes. We need to make sure that we have a coherent, integrated change journey, in particular for our staff, so that we aren't bombarding them with messages and different training needs for different projects, programs and technologies to take them on a journey towards the vision that we set out in point 2 on my chart here. And then finally, we need to address some of our resourcing challenges. The technology sector in Northern Ireland is pretty buoyant, and health and social care is not as competitive on salaries with some of our financial services organisations in Northern Ireland, for instance. So we need to make sure that we've got a really good plan for how we attract and retain all of the best talent to do our work. We're a bit limited on time in today's session, and I want to avoid talking at you all for an hour in order that we can leave 20 minutes or so at the end to take some questions. So what I plan to try and do with the time that we have today on digital dispatches is to cover the original intention of the presentation, to talk about financial year 22-23 and a bit of a summary for what we're planning to do in 23-24, and then maybe cover just the first half of these digital momentum topics, if I can squeeze it into the time that we have. And I'd be happy to arrange a follow-on discussion to cover the remaining topics in the future if people are interested. Before I do that, I just wanted to recap for a second for anybody who's tuned into Digital Dispatches today in the live webcast or maybe found us on the DHCNI YouTube channel. Just to remind people what DHCNI is all about, you'll see the branding throughout this deck, and it's worth just recapping for those that are new. The Digital Health and Care Northern Ireland, DHCNI, is a part of the Department of Health. It was created following the closure of the Health and Social Care Board alongside the Strategic Planning and Performance Group, and it works in partnership with organisations in the health and social care family to deliver roughly 10 main areas of accountability, and they're shown at the bottom here. So we deal with digital policy, and each one of these could be prepended with digital, funding, strategy, enterprise architecture, enterprise portfolio management, so managing our investments and prioritising the work that we do, digital innovation, the creation of an improved data capability to leverage information as an asset for health and social care for the future, and through that the building of the new Data Institute, and the organisation of our digital delivery structures, overseeing information and to a degree cybersecurity in health and social care, and finally capability development to make sure we've got the right staff with the right skills to do the right work at the right time. So that's DHCNI for you. Just dipping into the 22-23 financial year, when I reflected on the work that we've done over the last 12 months. It's been a huge year for digital in health and social care. And the retrospective that you can see here just helps us to realise quite how much amazing and exciting work has been accomplished and is coming forwards. The budget for this year, when we closed out the financial year at the end of March, we had spent just over £110 million of capital and just under £30 million of revenue. That capital number was higher than we'd anticipated when we went into FY 22-23, and the revenue number was slightly lower due to some slippage. The shape that you'll see on the top right-hand corner of this screen with the numbers, that is the enterprise portfolio rocket, because it looks a little bit like a rocket sitting on its side. So others have called it the sausage machine for enterprise portfolio management for our digital investments. And what that represents on the left-hand side is the funnel. So these are all of the requirements. These are the new digital projects and programs that our stakeholders are encouraging us to consider and deliver for the region. And that funnel uses a prioritization technique that I'll talk more about shortly to come down to a defined number of investments that we are seeking to make. The second step in that little chart on the top right of this page is those business cases that are being developed and approved with our financial stakeholders in the Department of Health and the Department of Finance. Once we've decided to deliver a project, there then needs to be a justification using the 5-case model for the funding to be made available for that project. The little grey bar there is what I've referred to in the past as the funding hurdle. So these are projects where the funding's been sought and secured from our financial stakeholders, and we can then move into implementation. And the number in the box on the right-hand side then is all of those projects and programs that are currently in one of the stages of the implementation lifecycle for a digital program or project. And you can see the numbers there. We've got 54 in the funnel, in the basically the commissioning life cycle, 38 business cases in development and 44 in delivery, so 136 in total. I'm not going to get a chance to talk to you all today about all of those projects. What I might do is just pick out 18 where we've made particular progress or there's particular interest in the work that we're doing. So if I begin in this table on this slide here by talking about the 3 E's, equip, encompass and evolve. So these are 3 critical transformation programs that are digitally enabled. The first one, equip, is where we're replacing all of the back office systems that our staff members would use in health and social care. So our finance, procurement, logistics and HR systems are all coming to the end of their current usable lives, and they need to be replaced, and the equip program is going to do that for us. The business case there has been approved and we're running through the pre-procurement activities. And that will ultimately see us deploying a single cloud-based ERP back office tool set to replace all of those existing systems. And that will bring a better user experience and more efficiencies in the way we manage our back office, both for staff across health and social care and also those individuals in the BSO shared services that would use those applications on a day-to-day basis to deliver shared service functions. Encompass is our biggest flagship investment program. It's the biggest investment that Northern Ireland's health and social care system has ever made. It's a 14-year-long program to replace all of the clinical workflow systems in our health and social care trusts across acute physical care, social work, community care and mental health services. It's a massive program, and there's a massive team, and I'm sure most of you have heard at least something about our Encompass project to deploy the big EPIC electronic medical record. So great progress being made there. We're working towards a go live in November this year for the South Eastern Trust, which is the first trust to take our once for Northern Ireland configuration of that system. Evolve, the final 3 of the 3 E's, is a program that used to be referred to as HSC Digital. And this is the program that will see us consolidating and integrating all of our IT functions and staff members across health and social care into a single employer entity, with the ability then to use that economy of scale, not necessarily to recruit large numbers of additional technologists, although we will be doing some of that, but it's more about how we leverage the resources that we have in a really intelligent way to prepare ourselves for a future where health and care is delivered using digital tools more and more frequently. The digital identity service is a replacement of our central master patient index and numbering system, and there's been great progress made on that project to deliver a system and begin to do some of the system testing. That's particularly complicated because you don't want to break your canonical master patient index system because there are so many downstream impacts and indexes taken from that particular system. We've made great progress on the core laboratory system to replace our labs as part of a consolidation of our labs and pathology services. The blood production and tracking replacement project has got its business case approved and is moving forward with procurement activities. There's a few projects on here, really interestingly, for NIAS, where the ambulance service is modernising a lot of its technologies and deploying electronic patient records into both the NIAS command centre and also into the ambulances to provide more information to those teams that are attending and conveying patients into the urgent and emergency care system. NIPACS is a replacement of our medical imaging technologies that do the storage and analysis and interpretation of medical images for X-rays and CTs and MRs. And there's great progress being made on NIPACS. The system has been selected and the procurement's been completed. And in 22-23, the build started. And we're getting ready at the moment for a rollout to the first trust. And then some of the complex migration work that's going to be going on in Belfast. There's lots of other projects that you can see on this page. Just in the interest of time, I'll just pick out a couple. So the digital workplace program is just getting off the starting line now to make use of the technologies that we bought from Microsoft, which is Office 365 and the associated tools like Microsoft Teams that brings with it for our staff members to be able to work more easily in the hybrid models that we find ourselves more often working in these days. Those collaboration tools and productivity tools that the technology enablement project deployed to us over the last few years, the digital workplace program will help us to think about the business change aspects of adopting those and embracing them in the ways that we work across the whole of health and social care. And the final one that I'll mention here is the cybersecurity program, where we are making a really significant investment, having developed the business case and moved that through into the review stage, where we can build the capabilities and some of the technologies that we need to assure that we are doing our best work to protect the information, the patient identifiable information that we're responsible for on behalf of our patients. So thinking forwards then into FY 23-24 from the 1st of April, what's our budget looking like this year? Well, we've got an increase in budget. So currently we're negotiating a budgetary settlement in the absence of an agreed upon budget anywhere in the Department of Health at the moment. We're getting a sort of tentative agreement to be able to use about £180 million worth of capital. So a bit of an increase on last year's allocation. And that's a function of our need to refresh, in particular, Microsoft Enterprise Agreement that comes with a pretty hefty price tag. And then the amount of revenue that we're receiving is just under 40 million. So again, an increase on last year. But that's to deal with the revenue implications of our contractually committed projects and programs. And I'll talk about that again in just a wee while when I go around the maintaining digital momentum plot face. Thinking about some of the key things that we're going to be doing in the coming 12 months, I've already mentioned a couple of the key milestones coming up this year. So the go live of the Encompass Epic project in the South Eastern Trust, the go live or continued go lives of the NIPACS, the new PACS system for the South East Trust, and the migrations for Belfast. The blood production and tracking system will continue with its completion of its procurement activities and system design and build activities during the course of this next year. The cybersecurity program that I mentioned earlier will move into mobilization, as will the digital workplace program. Digital dictation, which is the use of voice recognition technology to make it easier for clinicians to interact with, in particular, the Encompass Epic application, and to create really smooth workflows rather than people needing to sit at keyboards all day. So that's something that we're going to try and push forward in the next 12 months. I'm going to move on. If anybody wants any additional detail about these projects and programs and the big priorities and milestones, do feel free to reach out to the DHCNI team with the contact details that you'll find on the invitation for this digital dispatches session, and we'd be happy to share more detail. So moving back then to the maintaining digital momentum clock face, I'm going to try and cover off in just the next 10 or 15 minutes before we break for questions some of the key considerations that we have in how in the challenged economic climate in which we're currently living, how we can maintain the work on these digital innovations that will help us to drive transformation of services across health and care. So I'm going to start with understanding the problem space. And in each of these slides that I'll canter through now, I'm going to talk through the content that we need to bear in mind as we're going forward, but also give you a sense of how complete we are in our thinking in each of these areas. So what you can see on screen here, folks, is a list of 18 challenges or maybe opportunities, if you wanted to cast it that way, that we are addressing both in the digital investment portfolio and the way that we've then created our vision and strategy for the future. I'm not going to run through all of them, but this is the kind of headspace that we are in as technology leaders when we're thinking about what we're going to try and invest in over the next 5 years. So I'll just pick out half a dozen of these things for you. There has been in health and social care as a sector in Northern Ireland, more generally across the UK, but in particular in Northern Ireland, underinvestment in technology. There are benchmarks, norms across all industries that are collected by one of the observatory organisations, and they, if you measure our historic investment in technology as a sector, where technology could be a real benefit to the productivity and efficiency of the work that we do, we've been investing about half of what we should have been doing over the last 15 or so years, and that gives us a big hill to climb, a big set of investments that we need to make in order to create some parity with our neighbours who maybe are in some areas using technology and data better than we are. But if we want to become a really high performing health economy, we're going to need to kind of up the batting average when it comes to investments of this type in the coming years. As a result of that underinvestment, we've got a large number of concurrent end of life and end of contract systems that need to be replaced, where even if we wanted to, we wouldn't be able to keep adding funding and keep putting additional effort into maintaining those existing systems. There's just a set of technologies that are at the end of their usable tenure, and they need to be replaced. And because we've allowed some of this to build up over the last few years, we're in a place now where we've got quite a lot of concurrency and therefore a reasonable number of projects and programs that aren't optional. They are mandatory in terms of our ability to execute these delivery and transformation programs. We have, until quite recently, had kind of a lack of an agreed and accepted target state across the sector. And we probably had different versions of that in different organisations, and maybe some divergence in decision making and some of the architectural approaches that we took across the different organisations in health and care. Certainly COVID helped us in that regard. People are much more minded to work together, but the direction of travel around operational and clinical service configuration in Northern Ireland means that we need to be more consistent and more standardised and connected in the way we deliver technologies that then support those more consistent once for Northern Ireland workflows. We have had in the past multiple different and siloed workflow platforms where it's kind of hard to do the integration and data extraction to be able to create those once for Northern Ireland views of patients and longitudinal care continuum management across all of those organisations and systems and services. So our strategies will try and address that as we go forward. We have big challenges in attracting and retaining digital and IT talent. The point I'd made earlier on about Northern Ireland having a great and buoyant technology market, particularly in the fintech and insurtech sectors. That's brilliant for GDP and for jobs in the local economy. Not so great if you're in the health and social care system trying to attract digital talent on relatively lower salaries and packages. We've had historically a lack of evidence on benefits realisation to drive the justification of increasing investments in technology going forward. we've used techniques like post-project evaluations, but it hasn't been a real-time or near real-time articulation of the real value, cashable and non-cashable, of use of technology and data to drive innovations. So these are the sorts of problems that we have in our problem space, and we continue to work on both articulating these issues for our stakeholders in order to try and drive the appetite for continued investment, but also in the way that our strategy and target state vision will help us to address these problems going forwards. In terms of our completeness, we're about 100% done on 100% expected progress, and you can see the little icon here on the left-hand side just represents that, and you'll see that repeated through the slides. So the next thing about having a vision: what does the future look like? How do we want to use data and technology, and how are we articulating that? So lots of you have maybe had a chance to read this before. If not, grab your smartphone and hover over with the camera the QR code that's on screen here for you, and that's a link to the Department of Health website. And there's a mini site for the publishing of the digital vision and strategy for health and care in Northern Ireland, which went out in October last year. It's not one document, it's actually a collection of documents. There is a main strategy document, both a full hand version, which is about 90 pages, and a shorter summary, which is about 20, and some underlying kind of child strategies around data, cybersecurity, and innovation. And for those of you who haven't had a chance to just go and have a quick scan of those, I would encourage you to do so, because a lot of what I'm talking about today is captured in more detail in those documents. The implementation plan for that strategy is actually in two parts. So the investment portfolio, and you can see the little rocket shape there repeated again. All of these projects and programs that we're currently involved in delivering, they actually achieve a good part of what that strategy sets out. There is also a strategy implementation plan that helps us to do some of the softer things that aren't achieved through the harder technology-related projects and programs. Recognizing that digital strategy implementation plan isn't complete yet, and we had hoped to have that done by now, I'm marking us about 90% complete out of 100% expected on having that vision and being able to articulate that for our stakeholders. The next and third part of the top face is recognizing our budget pressures. So the graph that you can see here on screen is the profile of investment that we need to be able to achieve the strategy that we set out and launched in October last year. You'll see there is a real burst of investment, particularly capital investment, and an increase in our revenue requirements, both as a function of those capital investments and their revenue implications, but also in terms of the growth of some of our capacity and capability around digital more generally. The peak that you can see in this financial year, 23-24, addresses the point I'd made earlier about historic underinvestment and the need to address some of the technical debt that we're carrying in the system today. Where we're settling on our budgetary negotiations with our financial stakeholders in the Department of Health is slightly short on both capital and revenue. And I mentioned some big numbers earlier on, which is encouraging. But the reality is the numbers that we can afford are limited currently to the contractually committed projects and programs. So those things that are already in flight, many of which I talked to you on the FY23 review and 24 plan, those are now the limited set of investments that we can carry forward this year. We can't start anything new effectively without negotiating additional funding or experiencing slippage in year. So we are done on the negotiation of the budget. What we're waiting for now is the allocation of funding based on the confirmed budget that the Department of Health Finance Director will be doing off the back of the announcement of the Northern Ireland budget by the Secretary of State last week. Next one up is being able to prioritise effectively. So I talked again about the enterprise investment portfolio icon there. On the left-hand side, a lot of that is about taking a large number of ideas and requirements and kind of whittling down through a process of prioritization those investments that are going to give us both the biggest bang for our buck and are either statutorily or technologically mandated, given where we are with some of the challenges around underinvestment. So there's a slightly bigger picture, and you can see on the left-hand side those numbers that I'd shared with you earlier, 54 in the hopper of the sausage machine and 38 going through business case development. What I want to show you next is kind of how we go through that prioritization process. So we recognize that prioritization is part of a constant process of checks and balances to make sure that we're investing in the right technologies and delivering those technologies in the right way. So that is a constant process of prioritization. This isn't something that we do once every couple of years and that we set a financial plan. It's part and parcel of the enterprise portfolio management process. That process of prioritization seeks to understand requirements and categorize them in relation to the nature of the requirement. Is it driven by statute? Is it driven by technology debt? Is it an opportunity for transformation? And then through that, we do a balanced prioritization and planning exercise that allows us to then create a candidate list. And that candidate list is then ratified through our governance structures. Some of the tools that we use to do that are shown on the bottom of this page. So we have a chart that looks at attractiveness and achievability, and then the size of each of the investments. And we share that as the basis for a conversation about prioritization, recognizing that some of the hardest things might not necessarily be the things that you would choose to do first, even though they might have the biggest possible benefits. And that's about our ability to execute some of the core foundational capabilities we need to be successful. The categorization of those projects then thinks about the nature of the benefits that they deliver. Are they high potential? Are they key operational? Are they strategic? And then we look at the investment portfolio in terms of those categorizations to arrive at a group consensus decision on what the right set of projects to take forward would be. The place that we're at the moment is those contractually committed projects and programs that we've secured funding for this year are those that score highest in that prioritization exercise. So we're currently in sync between prioritization and delivery, and we'll continue to monitor that going forwards. The completeness of that, just to throw that icon up again, we are done in this process, and the EPMO team have been working really hard to put these mechanisms in place and be transparent in doing that with our stakeholders. So the next thing I talked about was being clear on risks. So if you can afford to do some projects that are contractually committed, you can't afford to do some others where there is a high priority requirement in some cases to deliver a technology, to replace an existing system, or to enable a new operating model or care model to be delivered. Not being able to afford to do those things brings with it risk. And it's really important for us as a technology community to articulate those risks really clearly, not in terms of the techie widgets and systems, but actually in terms of the business and those operational processes that might be hampered, or some challenges, for instance, around business continuity that come from our inability to afford to be able to deliver all of what we want to deliver within our funding envelope. So we have a 5-stage process for that. We define some funding scenarios. So what might the next few years of affordability look like? From that, we then identify for the scenarios different levels of business risk, and we validate that with our business stakeholders, and we talk about, in particular, the risk ratings and the timings when those risks will manifest as issues. We communicate and manage that, in particular, upwards from my post within the department to the departmental board and the kind of top table for transformation in health and social care in Northern Ireland, which is called PTEB, the Performance and Transformation Executive Board. And we keep them up to speed on those risks as they evolve and the impact of our affordability conversations on our ability to mitigate those risks. And as you would expect, we've got a series of tools that allow us to do that with the ragging status applied to those risks, as you would expect in those processes. We were working on this year. We were expecting to not be fully done, but certainly on the way. And actually, we made some really good progress on our risk assessment and buying in our stakeholders to the importance of understanding those risks as we plan the investment portfolio. And the final item I'm going to share with you today before I close and hand over to questions is about solving real problems and delivering real benefits. So I did a piece of work recently to try and summarize for the Department of Finance, the Northern Ireland office, and the Secretary of State the importance of the investments that we're making and what benefits these bring. And those benefits, as you would expect, fall into both qualitative, non-cash releasing and quantitative cash releasing benefits. And I've thrown a few examples up here. So there is echoing between the boxes on this chart and the problems that we'd set out in the challenges slide a wee while ago. So the sorts of benefits that we're talking about are consolidated health and social care pathways and workflows that are based on evidence and best practice, with streamlined, regionalized organizations and services enabled by those foundational digital capabilities that we deliver through our investment program, connecting staff and services across the ecosystem, across the health and social care family, providing real-time standardized data collection and monitoring to support dynamic decision-making. And you can read these yourselves. I won't drain them just in the interest of time, but there's all sorts of productivity and efficiency benefits that can be achieved through better capacity utilization and even enablement of income generation opportunities, particularly thinking about the innovation and research sector and that contribution to GDP in the region. So what I'll show you here just really quickly, and I'm not expecting you guys to have read all of this tiny detail in this table, but what I will say to you is that the magnitude of the benefits that we can achieve collectively through our investments is really significant and begins to tell a story that digital is a place where the public sector in Northern Ireland should be placing bets, should be backing horses and bringing investment monies, because it doesn't just deliver technology systems and services. It's a methodological, evidence-based approach to help the whole system and service to leverage digital to deliver improved and more sustainable and safer health and care services with better experiences for staff and for patients. And that is something that is measurable, and we're working on how we can go about building the scientific method to do better measurement of that, to deliver that case of justification to our stakeholders. We were hoping to be a little bit further ahead on that work than we are, although we're doing some good catch up, and we'll be focused over the course of the summer on building the benefits realization methodologies and capabilities across the portfolio. So I'm going to just close on this slide here. We've got a lot of challenges. I think that's clear. We've got a lot of challenges from a technology perspective, for sure, but across our budget and our operational services, we've got some big problems to solve as a community. Health and care fundamentally is unsustainable in its current configuration, and we need together to come up with some of the solutions that allow us to reconfigure those services for sustainability. We've got a strategy when it comes to digital technology and data, and that has a role to play in changing that relationship, which is pretty linear at the moment between the demand for services and the HR resources that we need to then be able to supply those services. So artificial intelligence, robotic process automation, some of those leading edge technologies have got a role to play, but we've got some foundational work to do to put our data in a place where we can apply those technologies effectively in the region. We've got a need for increased investment, and it's mine and my team's job to make the case for that increased investment. And we've had some limited success, but the economic climate is challenging and we'll have to continue watching that. And finally, the impact and benefits is significant. If we get all of this right, we can really help to make the lives for our staff across the health and care family and our service users better for the future. I'm going to bring my presentation to a close there. I'm going to stop sharing and flick back to the main screen here and just check with Dawn if there's been any questions in the chat so far. And if not, I open the floor to questions for attendees.
No, there's no questions in the chat at the minute.
Perfect. What questions has anybody got here live? Either put them in the chat or come off mute and you can ask live.
Hi, Dan. Do you mind if I speak? It's Paddy Sterling. I'm a GP.
Hello, Paddy. How are you?
I'm not too bad. Dan, I mean, thanks for a really interesting presentation. It's interesting because I was going to touch on the thing that you actually referenced it just then, so you kind of nixed my question a bit, but I'm going to try and ask it anyway, Dan, because you know I'm cheeky like that. I mean, I guess I'm a GP, and we're actually now have a reasonably good data warehouse or data lake or whatever the proper term is. Apologies, I'm a physician, and so I think we're probably at an exciting space where we are able to start to look at some of that automation and some of that, augmented clinical decision making. I appreciate AI is the bleeding edge, and there's a lot of validation, but I think we're in a potentially exciting space where actually with our workforce shortage, we can actually look to automate a lot of these clinical processes and work in a kind of augmented digital kind of digital clinician and digitally enhanced clinician world. What's your thoughts on that, Dan? And I appreciate I'm going blue sky.
It's not blue sky at all. It's happening. It's happening all around the world. If anybody here Googles NHS AI Lab, you'll find a dedicated website on the NHS England master site. And in there's a whole bunch of great examples and case studies of where artificial intelligence is being used to augment clinical practice today. The American College of Physicians said recently, doctors won't be replaced by artificial intelligence. Doctors that use artificial intelligence will replace doctors who don't. And obviously, the American healthcare system is a little bit different to ours, but I think some of that is true for us. In Northern Ireland, we're behind, I think, in a number of areas. I think some of our foundational capabilities and the quality of our data that is necessary to be able to drive some of those automatable and artificial processes isn't quite there yet. I think in some areas it's better than others, but through GPIP, through Encompass, through the coding standards program, through the implementation of an ontology server, we're going to get better at our data quality. I think we have then an opportunity to drive some of those technology innovations. And for me, it shouldn't be a centrally mandated thing where I wag my finger at people and tell them that they should be doing more artificial intelligence. I think if we get it right, it should be completely diffuse and ubiquitous across our sector, a bit like data analytics is or is becoming today. It shouldn't be the techies that do clinical transformation through artificial intelligence. It should be the clinicians that do that. And Paddy, to say that you are just a GP is hiding your light under a bushel there. We all know that. I think that my final point is about culture. I think there are those like you, Paddy, who are vanguards and innovators. But I think the batting average when it comes to embracing digital technology in automating our workflows and decision processes is generally fairly low. And I think we've got a job to do around awareness and education. I think we've got some policy setting to do and maybe a little bit of expectation setting from the professional community to their members as to what and whether individuals should be engaging on this journey. And Paddy, as I close out on these remarks, I'd be really interested in your perspective on that, because I'm sure you've got a view.
Oh, I think we're really gonna have an accelerated period of time where we realize that we can work so much better and so more efficiently with some of these technologies, and I think there is a real space to look into and grow into. And I think there are definitely pockets where you can pilot and prove the worth of this, and then hopefully that will inform and encourage the wider sphere that these things are possible, and actually we instead of repairing the boat, we start to build a new boat that works better for patients and physicians and for everybody.
Can it be a speedboat?
Happy with the speedboat, Dan. Happy. I'm going for a super yacht, but you can have a speedboat.
Yeah. Either way. So just to close out on that point, we recognise that we don't currently have any policies or guardrails about use of artificial intelligence in health and care in Northern Ireland. Lots of people are talking about ChatGPT, and I imagine lots of people here have used ChatGPT, which is fine. We would support that. But when you exchange information with ChatGPT, you are potentially sending health and social care information, hopefully at the moment not patient identifiable information, but I'm sure that's happening around the world, with an external third-party vendor with non-sovereign data hosting arrangements. So we need a policy, right? We need some guardrails, we need some guidance, and we need some expectations about what people who are interested in exploring what AI can do for them to do that in a safe and defined way. So we've just kicked off actually in the last couple of days a piece of work where Austin Tanney, who's the Health and Social Care Chief Data Officer, also previously Head of Artificial Intelligence for Kainos. He is going to convene a working group under the governance of the Enterprise Architecture Board, and that will pull together some brains to then develop or potentially adopt some of the GB policies and guidance in this space. Paddy, if you're interested in joining that, maybe just call out now or drop me a note in the background, because it'd be interesting to get your perspective in that group, just from a clinical endpoint.
Yeah, happy to help if I can make it then. Yeah, but I appreciate it. I mean, really helpful remarks so far. Yeah, really good.
Awesome, thank you. Paddy, I'll maybe do an introduction, if you don't know Austin, with him and the EA board, and we can take it from there. Any other questions, folks, for those gathered today? No. Stunned silence on a Friday afternoon before a long weekend. So I'm going to bring the digital dispatches today to a close. Thanks very much for your attention and interest. We'll have more of these. There's one every month, so look out for the invitations. Dawn, what's the next topic that we're covering off on digital dispatches?
The one next month in June is actually revisiting Encompass. We've got a regular drumbeat now every couple of months on an update, specific topics each time, but the progress we're making on Encompass and what activities are going on in prep for Southeastern Go Live.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for that, Dawn. And again, thanks for your attention. Have a great long weekend, everybody.
Cheers. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.